It's recently come out that the NBA ratings are down across the board, and it's led to some pretty exhausting conversations. Each person has their own theory for why the ratings have taken a hit, while others simply want to see the league fail. Let me list just some of the biggest talking points I've seen. Teams take way too many threes, foul baiting is still an issue, load management, awful media coverage, local blackouts, awful officiating, LeBron, players not being allowed to show any emotion on the court, lazy merch designs, the lack of defense, way too many advertisements, games starting 30 minutes after the original start time in the new CBA. I could keep going too, but hopefully you get the point. You'll see comments saying this is why the NBA ratings are down, or the NBA wonders why its ratings are down under basically every basketball related post. I think the real reason this is such a polarizing conversation isn't because people really care about the ratings, but everyone's more so using it as a platform to voice their frustrations with the league as a whole. There are a lot of things the league has been doing wrong for several years now, and it's gotten to the point where a lot of people are fed up. I just listed multiple things that people complain about on a daily basis, and really that's only scratching the surface. There are several reasons the ratings are down. It doesn't come down to one or two things, although some are larger issues than others. But I think the biggest reason the actual ratings are going down is because of greed, and it comes in many different forms. Tickets are unbelievably expensive, you need multiple subscriptions to watch games, ads are all over jerseys and courts, and there's commercials or ad reads every 5 seconds. The NBA is the most profitable it's ever been, however that's come at the cost of the actual product. I wasn't gonna make this video because I feel like this topic has been talked about to death, but then the NBA somehow reached another all-time low. Over the last week, the NBA has taken down third-party websites, Shot Creator, the High Low, and almost every other clip-finding site. If you've never used either of those, they're basically sites that can show you clips of the most specific stuff that you want to find, like every assisted two-point attempt a player has taken. They had perfect and easy-to-use interfaces, and it was a basketball lover's dream. But since they were using clips from the NBA's database, they have been completely shut down. This mainly sucks because one of two things is gonna happen. One, the NBA just takes them down and gives us no other alternative. Or two, they do give us an alternative, but it's gonna be significantly worse, 10 times more laggy, and at a low price of $14.99 a month. Those kinds of resources were one of the few things truly growing the game. But that's just one small example of greed ruining the sport. There are many more that are way worse. It's no coincidence that the greediest video game I've ever seen is centered around the NBA. The Uber Eats commercial about the NFL trying to sell you food is literally the NBA. If the league does anything, it's secretly an advertisement for something. Although half the time they don't even try to hide it. Like the NBA Finals court last year, there's almost more ad space than court space. They're genuinely starting to look like UFC octagons. Not to mention the games get stopped every minute just so they can show you a commercial or two. I remember during Klay Thompson's return to Golden State, Curry hit a crazy dagger, the arena exploded, and not 10 seconds after the shot, we're looking at Jake from State Farm. They don't let moments breathe at all, just so they can get as many ads in there as possible. There's been times where I'd have 4 games pulled up at once on YouTube TV, and every single one of them was on a commercial break. I'm all for using ads to make money, but when you're ruining the integrity of the game, it's an issue. I mean, NFL Red Zone is showing ads now, it's an epidemic at this point. But the NBA also makes it extremely difficult to watch games, especially in your own hometown, and even if you pay for League Pass, it doesn't always work. I've paid for the subscription and still chose to pull up games on an illegal stream site because it's faster and more convenient. An illegal streaming site should never be faster and more convenient than the NBA's official subscription service that costs over $100 for the year. In general, greed is the biggest reason for why the NBA operates the way it does. They don't make changes to benefit the game, they make changes to benefit their bank account. Which I get, it's a business, but you're milking short-term money while sacrificing long-term money and viewership. The NBA became an offensive-focused league because at the time, that's what sold, and we're getting to the point where certain players feel like it's not even worth it to focus on defense. When some people think of the good days of basketball, they think of those low-post battles between Kobe and Melo when they were basically fighting each other for position. We do sometimes still see that. Zach Edey and Draymond Green were chest fighting all game, but it doesn't happen nearly as often because of the way the game is officiated. The NBA has eliminated a lot of what used to make the league so good. The passion to be a two-way player and show up your opponent on both sides of the ball isn't nearly as common. Don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people that says nobody in the league plays defense, but it's definitely gotten harder to play, especially with how good players today are offensively. Just look at Dyson Daniels, he's changed his entire career with what he's doing on defense right now. Or how about Wembanyama, who's on pace to break like every shot blocking record there is. Could you imagine what some of these top defensive players and teams in the league right now would look like if they were actually allowed to play? That's greed trickling down and affecting how the game is played, and it also affects how the game is marketed. How often do you hear about the next generation of players? A little bit, some more than others. Now, how often do you hear about guys like KD, LeBron, and Curry? The NBA goes out of their way to promote the biggest names in the league instead of promoting its young stars. KD, LeBron, and Curry don't need extra promotion. Yes, show them here and there, but focus on the guys that need promotion. The way they go about it is so flawed. Wemby is the most promoted young player, and even he deserves more promotion in national TV games. Again, short-term money decisions affecting long-term money opportunities. Greed is the league's biggest issue to me, only because it affects so many different facets of the game, but there are several other reasons that the viewership has taken a hit. The most popular talking point surrounding this topic by far is that there are way too many three-pointers, and to a certain extent I completely agree. Some teams will literally lose games that they easily could have won had they just kept attacking the basket. And certain players are lazy and will shoot the first slightly open three they can find so they don't have to put the work in to find a better shot. But we're also currently in the most efficient era of all time, and three-point shooting is a big part of that. The Boston Celtics just won the NBA championship last season and are looking like one of the best teams in the league once again this season. And a massive part of that is their ability to stretch the floor. They have 3 players within the top 10 for most made threes so far this season. Having so many guys that can knock down threes consistently is rare, and it's what makes them so good. However, it's not a formula that any team can just copy and be successful. I agree that there are way too many teams and players that settle for threes when they don't need to, but when you're actually doing it right, it separates you from everybody else. If a team wants to shoot their way out of a game, then so be it. The better the team, the less you see stuff like that happen. We were just reminded of how fun three-pointers can be with Steph Curry in the Olympics, but there is definitely a balance. I'm not sure there's really anything the league can do to fix it. It's going to take coaches and players to clear the elephant in the room and stop giving every player the green light. And at the same time, the eras that people love to reminisce on also had some pretty glaring issues that nostalgia loves to forget. Either way, there's validity to both arguments. Another massive talking point for why the ratings are down is the media, which is something I've talked about plenty of times. Like many other things I've talked about in this video, this is a real problem with American sports in general. Every popular sports show just trashes on the league, and the NBA itself is doing it too, I'm not even kidding. During the in-season tournament, the NBA released an article literally saying that they didn't get the matchups they were hoping for during the semifinals. Some of the best teams in the league were facing off, but that's not the marquee matchup the league was looking for, and that being said publicly on their platform is just pathetic. But stuff like that happens on a daily basis when it comes to these talk shows. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because I think we all know how damaging these shows are at this point, but it's one of the biggest reasons the league is considered a joke today. You can't talk about how good one player is without tearing down someone else, and in general they talk about topics that don't matter whatsoever. They're also a big reason of why fans act so toxic. The NBA used to be covered by good journalists finding and talking about the best stories that nobody was covering. Now, if you have a mic and a heart full of hate, then you could become an analyst for whatever sport that you want. Barely any of these analysts actually watch sports, and they literally write their shows in hopes that they can create a viral clip that makes all the 10-year-olds laugh. It's annoying, it's disgraceful, and I don't think that you really understand how bad it is until you see how sports are covered outside of America. It really is why sports used to have a different feeling than they do now. It's all about how it's being presented. But that's enough complaining for one day. Am I surprised that the ratings are down? No, but in reality, this is a conversation that happens every few years. Even during that time of Kobe and Melo, people were saying that the NBA isn't as good as it used to be. It was a big deal when Jordan retired, and there were thousands of articles coming years after he retired saying the league would never recover. So to see that we're having the same conversation in 2024, I'm not really surprised. The perception that the NBA is completely awful and dying is a lot more negative than it actually is. It's like the meme about Little Caesars, the one saying that it's a lot better when you don't have someone in your ear complaining about it. It's the same thing when it comes to the NBA. There will always be issues with the league, and the ratings are gonna go up and down like they have have forever. And in a couple years, we're gonna have this exact same conversation again. I get why people have stopped watching, but I also feel bad for them because they're convinced that every game is just awful when that's not the case. There are so many good games on almost every day, but if you don't have League Pass and every other subscription service, then you might not see it, which is unfortunate. And until the greed issue starts to go away, I'm not really sure if any changes are gonna be made.